As a little girl, I was always fascinated by plays, musicals, and in general, the arts. Having a talent for acting early on, I didn't so much want to become famous as I wanted to entertain. Not only I did when I want to act, I wanted to know the workings of the whole shinbang. Just as much as an actor, remembering their lines, lightning was important, cues were important, and generally forming the correct environment for the pleasant viewing happened to be part of what I wanted to learn. The stage in my college was built not long ago, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure when it located inside the place called Schilling Hall. In the university I attended, I do recall the mentioning of it being renovated in the 1953. It's very old-fashioned, though it was meant to host live performances. There were rows upon seats, and above was a huge balcony for people to watch from. I've never seen the place packed, but I am hoping next time I act will be. There are all kinds of rumors about this place is haunted, but of course, I've never seen any evidence. And being the type of person I am, I won't believe anything unless I see it. Previously, I had seen people going up into the balcony and leaving a few pieces of candy on the rail for this ghost. I honestly think the cleanup crew could have just picked it up and tossed it, so it would be just a waste of time in my opinion. Now this ghost was described as a little brown-haired girl. It's about 7, is what most people guessed it, with her hair cut to a blob. She also wears a white dress with a pink tie around it. She is simply called the Rail Girl due to her appearing near the balcony rail for those who have seen her. I didn't used to believe in her, but I certainly changed my mind after a few events. A friend and I were chatting for lunch one day, and he, being quite superstitious, believed in the paranormal. He was yammering on about the girl that might be here, like she could have been a victim of murder or violation as she was built into the walls, or that she might have fallen from the balcony to her death. I rolled my eyes and highly doubt there was a ghost at all, so I told him quite simply, "Ryan, shut up and just eat your sandwich," and he proceeded with a sheepish grin. He knew I didn't believe him, but he always came up to me with his harebrained ideas. As time went on and passed, I worked in the auditorium, cleaning things up and checking the stage. I preferred the role of an actress so I could see how things work and operate the things just in case I didn't land a good role in the play or one of the newbies needed a guiding hand. I was sweeping the stage, and although it wasn't really that much of a mess, but I still wanted to look great for the next performance. I thought I heard footsteps. I'll note that these were not those typical heavy footfalls that you have mentioned in most of the scary stories. It sounded like a child running. I stopped for a moment and heard nothing. I couldn't discern of which direction it was coming from, so I assumed that Ryan had left the tape player in behind of the curtain just to give me some of that evidence that I would require to believe any of this. I didn't hear the sound anymore, but it still clicked behind the curtains in the other areas where most wouldn't lend a glance to the source of the sound. I found nothing. I spent a few times in that feed alone, cleaning up and simply surveying around the area for anything being amiss. Most nights were a Mondays, but nothing happened, and any ideas of the rail girl might have left my mind. I, however, realized my cellular phone was missing. I gave a little annoyed huff and started searching for it. I didn't know where I left it, and it wasn't there when I checked it. I only found it to beginning to glow and vibrate from a text I received. It was sitting on the arm of one of the chairs in the auditorium, and I knew that it was not where I left it. That's not where the weirdness ends either. One night I was going to get my things out of the dressing room after a rehearsal when I heard weeping. I froze in my tracks, only looking around to see if I could find the source. I shouted in anger at who it was of the cause of the sound. "Stop it! This isn't funny!" I admitted I was a little scared. The weeping stopped, but I still had an awkward feeling of being watched. Ryan and I were working together on the stage later, and we were setting up for another play's rehearsal. A few pieces he left of candy on the trail. I laughed at myself, viewing as some sort of ritual sacrifice. As we were setting up for the fog machine, started to run by itself. Ryan's eyes bulged and he ran over towards it to turn it off. It wasn't even on furthermore. It wasn't even plugged in. He decided that maybe there were free pieces that weren't enough and scurried over to leave the half of the bag. Needless to say, I wasn't giggling anymore. A few nights later, I got on stage to practice with the others in the play. Ryan, who mostly played the minor roles and made props, he was the creative one that way. I just spoke up to our leading lady. "Hey Karen, did you really bring my candy for the rail girl?" I didn't say anything. I just had a sneaking suspicion that she was real, and not that I would give Ryan any glory of knowing. Karen just laughed scornfully with a scoff. "Why would I leave candy for a stupid ghost? I bet it's not even real." I kept quiet. It's about the same way I felt a couple months ago. The rehearsal was most likely as planned. I had no idea why they picked Karen for the leading role, but I figured, as bad as it sounds, she got hit by a coercing of her teacher, and in her most lewd ways. She was rumored to be pretty much a woman that to sleep with guys. I did manage to keep up with their actions later lines, despite her emotionless acting. She was just getting off of the stage at the end of the rehearsal. I almost let out a frightful cry. The two pale hands reached over the steps and didn't even notice as her fingers curled around her ankle, until it was far too late. Those fingers tightened around her ankle and stumbled in an attempt to free them. Her face was pulled under before she could utter a single sound, and all I could do was stand back and watch. As she fell, those tiny pale hands retreated into the wood of the steps and vanished without a trace. I heard a sickening crack in her head connected with the solid floor. I was terrified. Although I didn't like Karen, I didn't want her hurt or even worse, dead. Fortunately, I saw no blood pooling, but I could tell the way her hands were that she tried to land to catch herself. After being looked over by one student that wanted to be a doctor and was just simply acting as a hobby, he noted that she was just knocked out. She came to a few minutes later, rattling on about someone tripped her. I could have sworn that I heard a giggle, but perhaps it was just my imagination. After Karen's injury, she said she wouldn't return to the theater, so I was to fill in for the role. I was happy about that much, not so disturbed by the ghost, but it made me somewhat nervous. I still practiced with the strange feeling that someone was watching me. A few nights had ran through my head. Should I have still brought up the candy? I didn't let it disturb my practice, so I had my lines most memorized so I could ad-lib a few things, with decent success. It was moments before the little girl just peeked out of her head and back into the door of the theater. It looked around and fled. She felt and fit the descriptions I had heard, but I continued to act. I dug around in my purse for a small bag of candy on the rail before I left. I did the same thing on the day of the play, and it all went smoothly. Weeks later, I was working in the balcony in the control room, messing around with the lights and whatnot, simply figuring out how they worked. I was also reading a book and studying in there, simply because the girls I shared a dorm with probably would be loud, drunk, and obnoxious at this hour. I had told a few of my friends where I would be, so as I heard a knock on the door, I went to answer it. I told a few of my friends, but I thinking I might be needed for something. I opened the door and saw nothing at first, until I looked down. A little girl with short brown hair peered up at me, as if expecting something. "Can I help you?" She just stared at me, swaying back and forth with her white dress, until she gave me a simple answer, "No." She vanished before my eyes. I was spooked, but I didn't go alone after that. I still go to that theater some days, and occasionally even act there. But every time I remembered the rail girl and made sure I'd leave a bag of candy, I can't say that I don't believe in ghosts anymore, but I could certainly say that she made my time in college quite interesting. Alright, that was a bag of candy, a creepypasta by Shinigami.Eyes. Yeah. With this pasta, there was a little bit too much of a build up, but with all due honesty, it honestly has a pretty good story. It says that it's based on local events of what's happening. I mean, I really like how this story went off as, being someone in a theater to do acting and that. And then they all of a sudden hear, some paranormal stuff. I mean, it's actually quite interesting now you think of it. I remember Mr. Deer read this one as well as Silver Stories. And by the way, I really hope Silver Stories does start, reading more stories again, because I know it has been a while since he last did them, but I think he's trying to get back into it. So I really hope he does more of it. So, yeah, it's actually a pretty well made story, and I definitely gotta say it's a really fun creepypasta with the good grammar, sentence structuring, everything about it. It honestly flat out makes it pretty good. And that's really one of the main things I'm really blessed with this story. Oh, overall, I do find this story to have like a pretty good concept. It's really neat. It's definitely well made. Time and effort into it. Flat out pretty good. I do really think that, this story could have a little, it kind of went into too much detail or, too much build up perhaps. But that's just how I think and see personally. Maybe you guys might have a different opinion, because you guys can have your own different opinion in the comments, because, like I said, this is just simply my own personal opinion on, this story. So, I still find it to be a pretty good story. I really found it to be really neat too. So, I mean, the fact that there's like the rail girl or something, it honestly really makes it a pretty good story, and that's honestly something I'm really saying. So, I gotta really say it's a pretty good story for what it is. So, I guess with that being the case and with that being this said, I'm going to sit here and just say um, I honestly didn't really have time to narrate this for a while. I think I was going to narrate it last week or something, but some stuff came up, but I was finally able to do so. With that being said, I want to say pretty good story. So to the author of this story, I don't know if you see this video, but if you happen to come across this video, I want to say great job. Awesome job. Definitely a lot of time and effort into the story. So I definitely got to say pretty good. I mean, I wish it could really understand, why is this girl haunting the place, or maybe give it a little bit of maybe background information of how the girl died and became a ghost and of the theater or something. I mean, that would actually provide a little bit more information to what actually happened. But like I said, that's just how I think. But it's just my opinion too. So, yeah. Anyways, I think with that being the case and that being said, I'm just going to sit here and basically explain, more and kind of wrap up the review. Now, anyways, with that being said, and with that being the case, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas. I'm gonna give this one a 8 out of 10. Not a bad story. I mean, it did go in a little bit, too much buildup, and I believe there was a bit too much buildup in this, and there could have been a little more explanation or maybe a backstory of, the ghost girl's, what happened to her past and how she died. I mean, I know she's haunting the place, but even if we give a little bit of some hints on what happened, I mean, it kind of does, but it doesn't really explain too much. But that's just how I think personally. But like I said, I mean, everybody's different on how they, have like their own thoughts. But like I said, I'm definitely going to say it's not a bad story. Pretty good. It actually has a really good concept, but I do wish it would give a little bit of hints as to what happened to the ghost girl, before she became a ghost, or what she's known for. But I would also like to hope that, the only thing I didn't really care for was that there was a little too much build up with the story. And that's me brutally saying something. But like I said, what did you guys personally think of this story? Do you all enjoy it? Did you all not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better. Feel free to leave me what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you're new to my channel, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications when I upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.